What do you do when the person you sacrificed your entire life for decides to erase you from theirs? Imagine standing in your kitchen, watching strangers celebrate your little sister's wedding on social media, only to realize you weren't just forgotten, you were intentionally uninvited. Before we uncover how a lifetime of devotion turned into a calculated betrayal, I want to ask, where are you watching this video from? Let me know in the comments below. The moment I realized my little sister never truly loved me, she was standing on a rooftop in a white wedding dress while strangers toasted to her happiness. Meanwhile, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at my phone like an outsider looking into someone else's life. I was not forgotten, I was erased on purpose. The worst part wasn't missing the wedding, it was understanding that after everything I had sacrificed for her, she still chose to cast me as the villain in her story. My name is Vanessa Carter. I am 38 years old, and for most of my life, I believed love meant carrying people even when your own back was breaking. I learned that lesson young, right after my mother died in a highway accident when my sister, Riley, was only 13. I was 23 at the time, barely surviving community college, juggling 2 jobs, and still trying to figure out my own future. But the night we buried our mother, Riley wrapped herself around me in the cemetery parking lot and cried so hard her entire body shook. From that moment on, I stopped being just her sister. I became her protector, provider, emergency contact, and backup parent all at once. Those early years blurred together in the harshest way possible. I worked mornings at an insurance office and nights at a diner that smelled of burnt grease and stale coffee. Some nights I came home so exhausted that my feet throbbed even after I lay down. I learned how to stretch $20 into a week of groceries. I routinely skipped meals so Riley could eat better lunches at school. I even bought her prom dress on a credit card that took me nearly a year to pay off. Every birthday, every field trip, and every school fee somehow landed on my shoulders. And I carried it willingly, because I loved her far more than my own comfort. Riley was brilliant, the kind of smart that made teachers smile the second they said her name. She wanted to become an architect and design luxury homes in big cities, and I believed in that dream almost more than she did. When the college acceptance letters arrived, I cried in the kitchen reading them while she jumped around the apartment screaming. The tuition was terrifying, but I made it work. I picked up extra shifts, sold my old car, drained my savings, and signed loan papers with hands that literally trembled from fear. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Someday she would succeed, and we would finally be able to breathe again. When Riley graduated, I sat near the back of the auditorium wearing the same black dress I had owned for years because I couldn't afford a new one. Everyone around me celebrated with flowers and expensive dinners, while I quietly checked my dwindling bank account under my folding chair. But when Riley walked across that stage, smiling with tears in her eyes, I convinced myself that every single sacrifice had been worth it. Then, she met Trevor. At first, he seemed charming in that polished, confident way people often mistake for maturity. He wore expensive watches, talked nonstop about business opportunities, and acted like every room belonged to him the second he walked in. Riley became obsessed quickly. Suddenly, every conversation centered around Trevor's plans, Trevor's goals, and Trevor's opinions. Soon after he entered the picture, cutting comments started slipping into our conversations. Riley began accusing me of treating her like a child. She said I always needed to control everything and claimed my help came with invisible strings attached. The accusations cut deep because they were completely absurd. I had never asked her for repayment, and I never demanded loyalty. I only ever wanted her to be safe. After Riley landed her first serious job, I purchased a loft condo downtown under my own name because her credit was still too weak to qualify. It was a beautiful place with brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a skyline view. The condo cost nearly $400,000, and I signed every single legal document myself. Riley promised she would take over the payments once she stabilized financially, and I believed her without hesitation. I even started a travel savings account for her because she dreamed of visiting Europe one day. Little by little, my entire financial life wrapped itself around hers. Over time, I stopped noticing just how much I was covering. Mortgage payments, utilities, internet, streaming subscriptions, parking fees, and insurance. Everything quietly auto-drafted from my accounts while Riley and Trevor built a glamorous online lifestyle filled with rooftop dinners and filtered vacation photos. Meanwhile, I still lived in a modest apartment with old appliances that rattled every single night. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my entire world cracked open through an Instagram post. I was standing in my kitchen making coffee before work when Riley's face appeared on my screen, wearing a wedding dress. Behind her, string lights glowed against a sunset skyline while Trevor held her waist like they were starring in a movie. The caption underneath read, "Finally married my best friend. Best night of my life." I remember staring so hard my eyes burned. My coffee cup slipped from my hand and slammed against the counter, shattering and splashing across the floor. My chest tightened so painfully I honestly thought I might faint. I refreshed the page twice, believing I had misunderstood, but there it was. Wedding photos, guests laughing, and champagne glasses raised in celebration. I was not invited. No phone call, no explanation, nothing. My hands shook as I dialed Riley's number. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. By the sixth attempt, Trevor finally answered, sounding irritated instead of surprised. "What do you want now, Vanessa?" His tone hit me harder than the wedding photos themselves. I asked to speak to my sister, but he laughed softly, saying she was busy celebrating. When I asked why I had to discover my own sister's wedding through social media like a total stranger, there was a long pause before Trevor delivered the sentence I will never forget. "Honestly, Vanessa, we didn't want you there. You make everything about yourself, and Riley is tired of feeling controlled by you." Controlled. The word made my stomach twist. I reminded him that I had spent 15 years supporting Riley financially and emotionally. Before I could even finish, Riley took the phone. Her voice sounded cold in a way I had never heard before. "Trevor isn't completely wrong, Vanessa. You always interfere. You never let me stand on my own." That sentence shattered something permanent inside me. I suddenly realized she had completely rewritten our history in her mind. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, and every financial payment had been transformed into evidence of control rather than proof of love. I asked her one simple question: "Do you want me to stop helping you completely?" She hesitated long enough for me to understand the truth before she even answered. "That is not what this is about," she whispered. But that was exactly what it was about. For the next week, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work, smiled at clients, and answered emails, all while pretending my chest wasn't collapsing inward. At night, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing the bills connected to Riley's life: condo payments, insurance renewals, streaming accounts, and parking garage fees. Thousands of dollars were flowing out of my account while she publicly erased me. The realization came slowly, and then all at once. They didn't want me around emotionally, but they fully expected access to everything I provided financially. That weekend, I drove to the condo unannounced. I needed Riley to say the truth to my face. When she opened the door, wedding gifts still covered the living room floor. Trevor stood right behind her, already holding his phone up as if he expected a confrontation worth recording. I asked Riley directly if she truly believed I had controlled her all these years. She crossed her arms and said I always made her feel indebted to me. Trevor smirked, adding that real generosity doesn't come with emotional pressure. I looked around the luxury condo I was actively paying for and felt something inside me go completely numb. Neighbors' doors began to crack open down the hall as our voices grew louder, but Trevor kept acting smug, like he had won some invisible battle. Riley wouldn't even look me in the eye. Then, Trevor said the words that changed everything. "You are not her parent, Vanessa. Stop acting like she owes you for basic help." Basic help. That was the exact moment my grief crystallized into absolute clarity. I left without yelling. I drove home quietly, opened my laptop, and made a comprehensive list of every single asset connected to my name: the condo deed, the travel fund, airline reservations, utilities, and insurance. Every account, every payment. The next morning, I called an attorney named Daniel Mercer. After reviewing the paperwork, he told me something simple but powerful: legally, Vanessa, everything belongs to you. That sentence felt like oxygen entering my lungs after years of being underwater. Within 48 hours, I canceled the Europe trip, shut down the savings account, transferred the utilities out of my name, and listed the condo for sale. I didn't threaten Riley beforehand, and I didn't argue. I simply stopped financing the fantasy life she built while treating me like an embarrassment. 4 months later, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Riley, crying. Trevor's financial schemes had completely collapsed. The sponsorship deals he bragged about evaporated, and their credit cards were maxed out. Because the condo sold much faster than expected, they were forced out sooner than planned. Ultimately, Trevor disappeared entirely after draining what little savings they had left. Riley sounded completely broken. She apologized repeatedly, admitting she had allowed Trevor to poison her mind against me because she desperately wanted to feel independent and sophisticated. Then came the request. She asked if she could stay with me temporarily while she rebuilt her life. For a brief second, my old instincts flared up. I wanted to rescue her. I wanted to fix everything like I always had. But then I remembered standing alone in my kitchen, watching strangers celebrate her wedding, and realizing I had never truly been valued as family. So, I told her no. Not angrily, not cruelly, just honestly. I explained to her that love without respect eventually becomes self-destruction. I told her I had spent too many years abandoning myself to save someone who would never protect me in return. She cried harder after that, but I stayed firm. When the call ended, I blocked the number and sat quietly by my window, watching the rain slide down the glass. These days, my life is peaceful in ways I never thought possible. I bought a smaller, beautiful condo just for myself. I spend my weekends reading in coffee shops, hiking with friends, and sleeping without a mountain of financial panic sitting on my chest. Sometimes I still think about Riley, but I no longer confuse sacrifice with love. The hardest lesson I ever learned was this. Some people will gladly stand beneath the shelter you built, all while complaining about the shadow it casts over them. If this story resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button for more narratives about betrayal, resilience, and finding your true worth when the people closest to you forget it. Thank you for watching.